The little dog's level of cognition was at such an impossibly superior degree of complexity and intelligence that the English language can only very vaguely describe its thoughts and intentions. Its cognition was so powerful that it even knew when it was being written about. It found the experience all rather curious and entertaining, but it did admittedly have some initial concerns, especially as it was such a pathetic and feeble being that was writing this part of the little dog's story. The critic was quite glad that the author didn't attempt to write its part in the first person, as such an attempt would have definitely led to a falling out. It would have been insulting to even consider being able to formulate such fantastically advanced and magnificent thinking into words. If the author dared try, the little dog had made it known that it would jump into the author's universe and eat him. Just after his conversation with the vagabond, the little dog teleported onto the sun as it fancied a little bit of warmth for a siesta. As the deity lay down on the violent, super-hot surface, it thought about how delighted it was to have found its new toy. It felt the sales director's destruction was such a rip-roaring good show. Numerous times it thought about the hilarity of a German shepherd flying into the director's head, a subsequent fatal headbutt. The vagabond had the type of chutzpah that I had not seen for a very long time. When you have lived for eternity, that's a lot of time. It was such a breath of fresh air for the deity to be able to watch this type of unpretentious and passionate violence, especially as the little dog felt that far too many life forms fought without any actual joy or love for what they did. Just before finding the vagabond, the little dog was almost ready to give up on finding a truly entertaining individual, except the best he could find at that point in time was Zorax the Third, or as many quivering trillions knew him as, Zorax the World Eater. The little dog hated to admit that at first it was somewhat enthusiastic about Zorax. With a name like World Eater, where could it go wrong? Also, Zorax, even at just 10 meters high, had murdered billions with his many razor-clawed appendages, something that was quite a nice personal touch. However, the more the dog watched the terrifying monster, the more it grew bored. The deity felt there was no joy or passion in Zorax's destruction and plunder, although it was certainly grand in scale, and at times its victims put up a splendid fight. The way the monster disposed of his foes was so tedious. There was no infectious energy and pizzazz in the murders. It was all rather mechanical. What made it even less bearable for the deity was that Zorax committed genocides for some silly reason around a religious belief that stemmed from a misinterpreted command from an allegedly belligerent god from dimension 26.291837446.12YZ. The little dog knew that the god from dimension 26.291837446.12YZ is probably the nicest god one could ever meet, and it wasn't best pleased about Zorax's level of fanaticism in its name. In fact, the god was incredibly embarrassed about Zorax, as the message it had left in that dimension was about the importance of using good sun cream when sunbathing. The god could not understand how the simple message had been so flagrantly misunderstood. The little dog remembered that the dull life form almost had a need for an incredibly long mantra that affirmed its dietary habits before, during, and after wreaking its destruction. Zorak wasn't the most eloquent of sorts, and he would drone on for a good millennium or two. The mantra went, I ate a screaming warbler from Prime 6. I ate a crying Teraz from Lacton Zeta. I ate a bleating rampant from Alpha Centauri 12532.9181, and so on until I'd listed all the billion types of life forms it had consumed. The mantra ended with, I will eat many more. That is the universal law. You are all food for my jaw. Ordinarily, the little dog would have given up on Zorax long before a million years had gone by, but as the monster was so painstakingly boring, the little dog actually found itself unhappily glued to watching the creature. It was like watching a car crash. Perhaps the wrong simile, as the little dog found it quite comical watching people die in such mechanical destruction. It was entertainment so uniquely bad that the critic struggled to stop watching the monster. The little dog, of course, eventually came to his senses when by chance he came across the vagabond, when taking a momentary break from Zorax. Even with the discovery of a rambunctious human being, the thought that such a magnificent being like itself had ever considered using Zorax the World Eater as its plaything started to aggravate it to no end. The little dog felt as far too superior to be that wrong. Even though the critic had purposely made itself flawed so this reality would be more entertaining. Of course, with a quick rationalisation, the little dog determined that it was ultimately Zorax's fault for being such a bore and tricking the little dog into wasting his time. The supernatural being suddenly felt rather perplexed as it realised they hadn't yet disposed of the monster. Quickly it made a few mental calculations that no human or mortal being could ever comprehend, and then disappeared off the sun. A couple of minutes later, the canine reappeared on the surface of a star with a satisfied smile on its face and a slightly larger tummy. The Black Scottish Terrier felt Zorax had put up a better fight than anticipated, but ultimately it was just a feisty snack. It was a pleasant surprise for the deity, though, that the World Eater tasted better than expected. The canine could feel the monster's mutilated remains pleasantly wriggle in its belly as it lolled back onto the violent surface of the sun. A ferocious solar flare snapped off the surface and lightly tickled the deity's back. The little dog lackadaisically thought to itself that it had been such a long time since it had felt this interested in the life form's ability to entertain. After Zorax had started to think negatively about life forms, they all seemed to have this obsession with painting the genetic code onto the whole universe, and they seemed to have an even bigger ego than the deity. They all believed that they were perfect in some way, and usually some god or philosophy bestowed on them the divine purpose of spraying their bits of goo everywhere. This usually led to quite hilarious circumstances. You can't have two different life forms thinking they are the ultimate specimen. The comical dismemberment of limbs naturally followed. Having spent billions or maybe trillions of years looking for subjects for his entertainment, the little dog had developed a keen eye for spotting potential. It knew straight away when it saw a vagabond that with a little tweaking he was going to be a splendid entertainer. The canine's plan was to turn him into a star, as the highest height of fame is to be able to entertain the omnipotent. As his plan had been set into motion, the deity had a quick think about what other manipulations were needed for the vagabond. The dogland curled up and fell asleep on the sun's surface. However, it wasn't quite asleep, as in a way the little dog was still fully wide awake. It was just something that had started to act out a few billion years ago, as it seemed like a fun thing to do. A minute after the deity's eyes closed, the tentacle grew from its back, and although it didn't have eyes, it appeared to apprehensively look around. It saw that it was by itself and that there was no food around, but then on instinct it straightened up slightly as it realised what it was supposed to do. A portal opened up and showed within it a giant black set of servers where the odd, colourful light flashed on them. It was in a huge air-conditioned room where no one was to be seen. While still attached, the tentacle grew at will in length and entered the portal and the server room. It appeared to look around the room, and then the tentacle touched the servers to access all its contents. There were, of course, firewalls and software security in place, but the tentacle didn't need to think twice to bypass these. Soon it had all of Greater Manchester's police data at its disposal. The tentacle noticed there had been a recent upgrade to the entire computer system. A quick shuffling of files and the information of the deity's new toy became too irreversibly corrupt to ever be accessed, and it made it look as if the cause of this was a system upgrade. As soon as the tentacle had finished, the door to the server room opened. It quickly shot back to the portal and was just about to go back onto the surface of the sun when it changed its mind. Instead, it slunk down the corner of the wall until it came across an intruder, an obese IT technician. The tentacle thought that his master would appreciate a midnight snack, so it grabbed the man by the leg, and before he could scream, it snapped back through the portal. Unfortunately, the tentacle forgot that humans were not the most hardy, as the IT technician was vaporized as soon as he was pulled through and onto the sun. The tentacle sheepishly looked around to see if anyone had seen its mistake and turned back to find the little dog still asleep. The tentacle turned back around, closed the portal to the server and opened another. This time the entrance was behind a pale bowl in a near square prison guard sitting alone at a computer. The appendage sneaked in behind the guard and then shot right into its neck. The guard didn't flinch. He didn't even notice that the tentacle was inside him. Millions of microscopic tentacles grew from it, and then these headed to its brain and hands. Through controlling the guard, the tentacle accessed the prison mainframe, bypassed all the security, deleted all files of the vagabond and prisoners that had been inside with him at the same time, switched off all firewalls, and left it all wide open to malware. The deity's limb that made the man access ream after ream of gay interracial gangbang pornography on virus-infected infested websites, all of which had a balding white male as a receiving star. The tentacle shot back out of guard and back onto the sun when there was enough malware to completely destabilize the system. The mischievous limb opened one last portal. This doorway opened right behind a gaunt rake of a scientist who was studying collected data on her computer. Again, the tentacle sneakily entered the person to control him. This time it was to manipulate her so that she became a far more discerning with regards to the data about bumblebees and pesticides on her computer. The invasive appendage shot right back after Haystack's worth of information was efficiently and perfectly analysed. Back on the sun, the tentacle looked around and appeared to wait to see if any of his brethren were going to join it or had any more orders, and it realised the job was done. It approached the little dog apprehensively at first and suddenly snapped back into the deity's body. Just before the little dog started to slightly snore, a small smile crept up onto its face.